Hey, welcome back. Today we're talking about the literary term rhyme and why it matters in poetry. The simplest definition of rhyme is when two words have the same terminal sound. That means they end with the same sound, like bark and park. You probably learned that a long time ago. But the way rhyme is used in poetry can be a lot more complex than that. And there are even some types of rhyme that kind of defy that rule. Let's look at this. So first of all, why use rhyme in poetry? Rhyme is what we call a structural element. It's part of the way a poem is put together. There are two parts of a poem: the content, or the meaning of the words inside, and the form, or the way it's put together. Rhyme adds to the form and structure of a poem. Both of these elements are important for appreciating and understanding the poem. The poem affects us not just because of what it's talking about, although that's very important, but also the way it talks about what it's talking about. Rhyme influences the way we feel as we're reading it. Rhyme can be silly, rhyme can be eloquent, rhyme can be uncomfortable. A good poet will choose rhyme carefully in the way that it influences the reader. When talking about rhyme, there are three concepts that are useful: sound, position, and syllable. Let's start with sound. So as I said at the beginning, the traditional rhyme has the same terminal or ending sound, but that isn't always true. If it does have the same ending sound, we call that a full rhyme. Notice the rhymes in the beginning of William Blake's London. I wandered through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe. Meet, street, flow, woe, those are very clear rhymes with matching ending sounds. This poem is a poem that's sad, and the rhyme adds a little bit of emphasis, a little bit of eloquence to that sadness. There's something pleasurable about hearing matching sounds to us that makes us feel a sense of anticipation and a sense of comfort when we come to the end of the rhyme. On the other hand, there's another kind of rhyme called a slant rhyme. A slant rhyme is when the rhyme doesn't quite match. It sounds very similar, maybe the same vowel sound, but not quite the same consonant. Take, for instance, the two words heart and hard. They sound similar: heart, hard, and there's just enough difference to make it slightly uncomfortable. So a careful poet might include an instance of slant rhyme in order to make the reader feel a sense of anticipation of the rhyme, but then that rhyme isn't fully satisfying. There's something not quite right about it. This is similar to the way that a cinematographer might tilt the camera a little bit in a spooky or unsettling scene, because it gives us a feeling of being on edge without us really even noticing it. You could read a poem with slant rhyme in it and not really notice that it had slant rhyme, but still subconsciously feel that sense of discomfort. Bum bum bum. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Here's an example of slant rhyme from George Wolfe, To My Wife. If love is like a bridge, or maybe like a grudge, and time is like a river that kills us with a shiver, then what have all these mornings meant but aging into love? Notice the shift between bridge and grudge. They both end with j, but the vowel sound is different enough that it makes it slightly uncomfortable. Bridge, grudge. There are other variations of this, like using assonance or alliteration to create a pseudo-rhyme. The last sound rhyme I'd like to talk about is identical rhyme. What happens if the words are exactly the same? Well, technically they still rhyme, but it's really the same word. Notice the opening of The Lotus Eaters by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Courage, he said, and pointed toward the land. This mounting wave will roll us shoreward soon. In the afternoon they came unto a land in which it seemed always afternoon. Notice the repetition of land and land, afternoon and afternoon. He makes land rhyme with land, which it's the same word. What's the effect of that? Well, it has this sort of plodding, boring feeling, which you don't want poetry to be boring, but there are times when you're trying to express the feeling of boredom, which Tennyson is. They're entering into the land of the Lotus Eaters, where everyone just eats these plants and forgets about everything and just kind of sits there for the rest of their lives. And he's setting up that feeling with that first sound of identical rhyme. Okay, so that's how sound influences rhyme. What about position? There are multiple places where you can put a rhyme. Usually you put the rhyme at the end of the line, and then that end rhyme will rhyme with another rhyme somewhere further down the stanza. However, there's another place you can put your rhyme. It's called an internal rhyme. and that is when you have rhyme inside of a line. It creates a pretty interesting effect. As in Edgar Allan Poe's very famous poem, The Raven. And the raven never flitting, still is sitting on the placid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming casts his shadow in the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. You see how that internal rhyme, that feeling of repetition in the rhyme, creates that effect that makes that poem so charming. Not only is there rhyme at the end of the lines, but it also has that repetition of rhyme inside, laying it on thick. At this point, I should probably comment on the idea of rhyme scheme. So the rhyme scheme is the way we measure which lines end in a rhyme. And usually we designate this with letters. When marking the rhyme scheme, every time you come across a rhyme that you've already heard, you mark it with the letter you used previously. And when you come across a new end word, you mark it with a new letter. Then you can begin to distinguish the patterns. So for instance, in an English sonnet, you'd have A, B, C, D, C, D, etc. The A's rhyme with the A's, the B's rhyme with the B's, the C's rhyme with the C's, and so on. Notice how they alternate lines. You could also have two lines together that make a couplet, as at the end of a sonnet where it goes GG. Or you could rearrange and put them in other ways, like for instance the Italian sonnet goes A, B, B, A, B, B, A. So notice you've used the same end rhyme 4 times for A and 4 times for B. Other styles of poetry use different rhyme schemes, or you can come up with your own kind. And we should notice here that rhyme can also help us to break the poem into meaningful sections. Like in the sonnet, A, B, those first 4 lines go together because they have a matching rhyme set. The next lines, C, D, are a new point. I talked a lot more about this in my video on sonnets, and you can go watch that if you want to know more about how a sonnet is broken apart. You can see the link in the comments below, or click on it at the end of the video. Okay, so let's practice marking the rhyme scheme on the famous poem by Robert Frost, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Eve. The first line, whose woods these are, I think I know. A. His house is in the village, though. Though rhymes with no, so A again. He will not see me stopping here. Here does not rhyme with either of the previous words, so B. To watch his woods fill up with snow. Oh hey look, snow rhymes with our first 2 rhymes, and therefore it is another A. So the first stanza is A, B, A. Next stanza, my little horse must think it queer. That rhymes with the B above. Another B. To stop without a farmhouse near. Oh look, another B. Third line of stanza 2, between the woods and snowy lake. Ah, now we have a new word that doesn't rhyme with any of our previous. So we're going to mark this as C, the darkest evening of the year. Look, it's another B. So our rhyme scheme so far is A, B, B, C, B. Do you notice a pattern? Do you notice also the way previous stanzas are connecting to later stanzas through rhyme? Last 2 stanzas. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. C, C, D, C. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. D, 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 D. Notice the way, in concluding the poem, instead of connecting it to a later stanza, because there are no later stanzas, he simply keeps the D rhyme going all the way down. But he does create something alternate about that third line by making it identical to the final line, an identical rhyme. Both the fact that there's an identical rhyme, in fact an entire identical line, and the fact that we break the pattern of reaching forward to the next stanza gives us a feeling of conclusion. That last settling on that last line, the repetition of that last line, makes it feel as though it's settling in on us. The way the feelings that the narrator is having as he looks into this snowy wood are sort of settling into him. He has this desire to enter this frozen world and maybe die, but he slowly shakes it off at the end and chooses life instead. Rhyme can powerfully influence the way the poem feels and the way we read it. Finally, we want to talk about rhyme syllable. The syllable that the rhyme falls on matters and makes a difference in the way it feels. So, if you know anything about rhythm, you know there are stressed and unstressed syllables. If you don't know much about rhythm, I'm going to put up another video about rhythm pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. I'll link it at the end of this video as soon as I get it. A stressed syllable is a hard syllable. It's a syllable that you put a lot of emphasis on. An unstressed syllable is more soft. A rhyme can fall on either syllable. So for instance, you might have the rhyme break and take. Both break and take are hard or stressed syllables. On the other hand, you might have the rhyme going and mowing. Go and mow are hard syllables, but the ing at the end of each of them is soft. Both those sets of words rhyme, but they create a slightly different effect. Break and take is firm and confident. Going and mowing, we have that soft ending that slows things down a little bit. It lightens the feeling. When creating a rhyme with a soft or unstressed syllable, it lightens things up a bit. Traditionally, the difference between these two kinds of rhymes are called masculine and feminine rhymes. The masculine rhymes are the hard or stressed syllables, and the feminine rhymes are the unstressed syllables. Please hold all comments on rhyme gender bias. I just teach this stuff. So that's what there is to know about rhyme. To recap, the three different areas you can talk about with rhyme are sound, where you can have a full rhyme, which sounds strong, or a slant rhyme, which sounds uncomfortable or uneasy, or an identical rhyme, which sounds boring. You can also have different positions, like the end position, an end rhyme, or an internal rhyme. The end rhyme is the traditional and usual format for rhyme, and the internal rhyme creates a sense of repetition. It heightens the feeling. We can also vary the pattern of rhyme, which shows us where the poem is broken into meaningful sections, or draws connections between earlier parts of the poem and later parts of the poem. Finally, the type of syllable that we choose to end the rhyme on changes the feeling as well. The stronger stressed syllable versus the lighter unstressed syllable. That's our quick look at rhyme. Tune in next week for another literary term. You can click over here for another video, like that video over sonnets, or as soon as I get it up, the video over rhythm, or you can click to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.